Hello, everybody, and welcome back to episode number 16 here in our EMC to the Sky playthrough. Did a few things in between episodes, and I'm going to show them to you quickly before we get into today's episode, where we're going to work on the Powah chapter and getting power set up in our base here. So, first of all, I worked on one of the chapters in our book because it was really kind of just a grindy thing, so I just knocked it out. So the Flux Networks is a mod that allows us to have wireless power transfer. And if we go through the quest book and look, the flux cores are just items that are made using the flux dust that we made in our Britannia setup in the last episode, obsidian and eyes of ender, which are made from blaze powder and ender pearls. So it's all stuff that we already have in our EMC network. And then you use that to make flux points, flux plugs, and a controller. The flux point is a place where you can send power out wirelessly. The plug is where you can pull it in. So you put the plug on a generator, you put this on a machine that uses the power, and it transfers it. And the controller is what you use to set up the networks to make that happen. After that, it was just a matter of making storage, and the storage is done in tiers up to the gargantuan level, and basically the gargantuan one takes 6 of the Herculean ones, which each takes 6 of the basic ones. So we just had to craft 36 of the basic flux storage and combine it with some glass to get our max level storage, which we have put here. So we have this storing a huge amount of power. We have this set up with our network so that we can transfer up to 800,000 power over that network. So I think that we can actually increase that and make it unlimited if we need to, but that's way beyond our power capabilities right now. And so, did I connect this to the wireless? No, I still have this connected manually, but I do have in our power system, I added on a flux plug just to test out the wireless capabilities. I haven't done anything to change the power systems yet, because that is what we're going to be working on today with our new upgrade into power. We can still use this power. This is certainly viable, but I want to get into some more advanced stuff so we can do more. So you can see here we have a flux plug on here. It can transfer up to 800,000, but it's limited by the fact that this flux cell can only transfer 24K. So right now, if we connect a plug, we can potentially get 24,000 FE per tick flowing from our plug, or from our point. So if we go back over here, I also want to show you, in order to do that, we needed to have a lot more flux dust, and so I set up a little bit of automation, and I did a little building to do that. So I wanted to, Britannia, since it is a flower-based mod, I thought it would be nice to have a greenhouse. So I added a greenhouse out here on the back of our building, and let's come around so we can see it from the outside. Nothing fancy, it's just a boxed-in glass area with some fancy glass that kind of matches the building. And we have a place where we can do our plant stuff there. And we have our Britannia setup. We did a couple of automation things in that. So first of all, I moved the pedal apothecary over here, so I just have water so I can reload it. I didn't automate this at all. And our runic altar is the same. It's just receiving mana here, but I didn't do any automation with it. But I did automate the production of mana so that we have plenty of mana to work with. So these endo flames from, remember from last episode, are powered by coal. So if we take a mana tablet and I set the function on this pool to be pull out mana so that there is mana needed, it sets off the redstone, and you can see some of the endo flames are receiving coal and lighting up. They'll continue to do that as long as there is a need for the coal to do them. The automation for this is two parts. There is automation here where this pressure plate, I drop coal blocks onto it, and it then sends a signal telling to not drop any more. So it always have 2 coal blocks on top of it. Well, sometimes it'll have one if one of them's used, but it will keep coal on there in reach for the endo flames. It will stop dropping them when there are coal on the pressure plate, because the pressure plate sends a signal to lock the hopper that is leading into the open crate. That hopper is supplied by this basic EMC link to drop coal blocks into the system. So when there is not coal on the pressure plate, it drops more coal. The endo flames pick it up, and then it keeps it from just dropping more and more coal when all the endo flames are running, because there's already coal sitting there waiting to be picked up. And as soon as one of these run out, it'll pick up more coal and it'll start that loop again. Now, in order to make it so that we don't have that happening constantly, let's switch the function back on here, and I'm going to throw this mana tablet back in, and we can see what happens as this fills back up. The mana pool, it gets more and more mana, and when it continues to go and it gets to the point where it completely fills up, there is some redstone here. So this comparator sends a redstone signal out. It leads over to a repeater in the back there, and as soon as this is full, it turns that comparator on, which also locks that hopper, meaning no more coal will drop out. This will keep running a little bit until the coal that's there gets eaten up, but then it'll stop and there won't be any coal, so the endo flames will stop running. That way we don't have this running constantly using up coal when there's no need for more mana. The mana goes to the runic altar so we can use it. And in order to achieve this, I have a comparator on subtract mode. There's 4 blocks of items in here, which is just what we need to cover that length of that redstone. If you make the redstone a little different, you'll have to change the amount of stone that's in here, but that's what makes it so it all sets off. So anytime I switch it out and take some mana out or add mana into the pool, so again, if I were to set this on function mode and switch this to pull it out, and I throw my mana tablet in there so it's pulling some mana out. Let's pull that out. You can see it kicked back on. It's dropping out coal. The endo flames all kick on, and this pool continues to fill up. And once it is full, it will shut off again. So I don't want to pick that up. I want to watch it actually, so you can see it very quickly shut off back there with the comparator. And that way we will always have a full mana pool here, because as soon as it needs mana, it will turn the endo flames back on and fill it back up. So pretty cool. So that we use that to make it so we can make a lot of flux dust pretty easily. Down the road, if we need large amounts of them, there are ways to automate this so that the dropper will put on the items that we need in the right order, and we can just craft it on demand. But I don't think that that's going to be necessary. It doesn't take long to make several stacks of flux dust. And the only thing I think we'll need them from now on is making more flux points. And the flux points just take some of these flux cores. So you end up, you need 1 flux dust for each flux core, and you need 4 of these. So you just need 4 flux dust for each flux point, which is not a lot. And the plugs are the same way. So if we were to look at the plugs instead, they use 4 ender cores with a flux block. So they're a little heavier with the amount of flux dust that they need, but not a ton of it. So I'll probably just manually craft it unless we get to the point where we need to have stacks and stacks and stacks, and then we can do some automation. But so we're done with the Britannia, we're done with the Flux Networks, and we finished that chapter out and got I think we took the chapter reward for it already. We did. Gave us some more EMC. And now we're going to get into Powah. So taking a look at that, it is a mod that is designed with a tiered system to make more power. And so we're going to start by looking at this. He says we're not going to put a quest for every kind and tier of power generating block for power in this quest line, but know that there are quite a few options. So there's different things. This is similar to the generators in thermal, where there are furnators, which is a generator that burns coal or other combustible items to generate power. Magmators uses lava. Thermos and reactors. Thermos, I think, use heat, but I'm not quite sure. We'll have to look at that. Reactors are the ones that are powered by uraninite, and they are the largest power source by far. But so all of them have a tiered system where they start off with the basic tier. They go up to hardened, blazing, niotic, spirited, and nitro. And so we have to work our way through all those tiers to be able to get to the biggest one. And then they each have different levels of what they're able to produce during those times. So my crafting grid's out of power. That is something else we want to address. We want to make our power or crafting grid retains power wirelessly. So let's take a look at power first. So if we look at the different tiers, you can see the basic ones, they have a max in-out of 2,500 FE, and then it goes to 8, goes to 20, 50, 100, 400, and then I guess the creative one is not something we can craft. So 400K for the energy cell is the maximum. So it's much larger than the ones that we have with thermal, and the generators are the same way. So we start with small amounts and we work all the way up, and then the high level ones produce a lot of power. So let's look at the reactors, because it's probably what we're going to get into. Reactor blocks are down here. So if we go all the way up to nitro, we can generate 5.4 thousand FE per tick from the reactor. So if we can get that done, we can create large amounts of power. And they also have in this pack big reactors, which is a mod for generating power from uranium. And there is a quest line in here that says big reactors, but it is just a checkbox because he doesn't have a quest line for it yet. But we're probably going to get into both of those. Before I get into anything, though, I want to look in here. There is a set for wireless charging, and so I can set it so that these different areas are able to be charged wirelessly. So I'm going to enable wireless. So if anything is in my curio slot, my armor slots, offhand, hotbar, or main hand, they will charge. So let's put this into our curio slot. Is that this one here? Yeah, it is. And then what we're going to do is go to controls, and we're going to go to crafting grid. Our wireless crafting grid. I'm going to set this to a different key that's unique. So now anytime I use that key, that's not what I wanted. No conflicts. Interesting. Oh, this is where I wanted that. This is something different. There we go. Now, anytime I press that key, it'll bring up my wireless crafting grid. That can stay in my curio slot, and it will automatically be charged by our wireless network. So as long as our Flux network has power, we'll be able to just open up our crafting grid whenever we're in range, which will be pretty excellent. All right, we're going to use the second floor here for our Powah setup, and we're going to just get started making some of the things we need for it. So the first tier is the starter tier. And to make starter elements, we need to make some different components. So the dielectric rod is made using dielectric paste and iron bars. Both of those are things that we already have EMC'd. So I crafted some, and these are also EMCable. So we're going to just put those into our system. And then we will work on the next step, which is using these dielectric rods to make these different components. So the tiny capacitors are made from capacitors. These are also made from EMC components. So as we go, we can just teach our system how to make these. So now we can do the base tiny capacitors because they're just made from the regular ones. Again, we have them EMCable, which means that we can just make one and then we're good to go for them. The casings are also something that is EMCable. We need to make the rods go the other direction, which is just a matter of converting them from one way to the other. And again, that is something we can teach our system. So now that we have that, we can make our casing. Our casing is able to be taught to our system. And finally, the last step is making the starter energizing rod. But now, since all of these items are EMCable, we can just make as many of these as we need. So we don't have to worry about the crafting all the intermediary steps, which makes this a lot easier. So let's look at our quest book to see what else we need. We need the energizing rod, and we're going to do some energy storage. So let's look at the lowest level for energy cells, which is the starter. This again is something that can craft from all things that we have in our EMC network. Makes them really easy to make. We're going to put those into use to make our storage here. So these are basically, we don't have the starter level here. The first level we have is the basic tier. So basic is what we use to get to the first level of upgrading throughout the tier system. And we have a crafting manager here, so we can just find an open slot to put this in. And now when we go to craft these, it will use the correct one, and we can make one of these available. We need to have that starter rod in the system for that to happen, and we can go like that. So now we have an energy rod basic. I think that we should also teach the system how to make these, even though it is an EMC recipe, just so that when we want to get to the higher tiers, we can have this in here. And we're going to do the same for the energy cell. So let's teach our system how to make the energy cell starter that we made. And then we'll teach it how to make the basic one, which is like this. Then under here, we'll be able to craft the energy cells basics as on demand when we need them and be able to get it for the quest. So now that we have the basic tier, it gives us iron and gold, which is an indicator of what we need to do with that. We're going to have to use the energizing orb to go any farther. So let's make an energizing orb. We're only going to need one of these, so I don't think I'm going to teach it how to make it, because our EMC network can make them as well. So let's do that. But we're only ever going to need one of these. I mean, it's potential we might set up more than one network or more than one system, but we're basically going to put this in here. I'm going to set it down like this. The energizing orb is where we place items that we're going to be converting. The energizing rod is something that we're going to use to put power onto these. So what we're going to utilize, because we have it, is Flux Networks. So we're going to do a flux point, and we're going to use that to create power. So let's put it right here. And then we're just going to take a rod and we'll put it on that. We'll set this to our network, which means this rod is now receiving power from our network. That rod will be able to, let's move this out just a little bit more. And now the recipe for our first tier is to use iron and gold. And you can see the energizing rod has started energizing it, and it takes 10,000 FE. And once 10,000 FE has been provided, we can get energized steel. Now, this system is, normally you have to automate creating of some of these things, but because we can take energized steel and learn it in our EMC system, that means that we are now able to make everything from that tier without having to do all of the automation to craft it. So we're going to come down here and we're going to say we want to make our energizing rod up to the hardened tier. All we have to do is set up a recipe to craft it. And the same with our energy cell up to the hardened tier. Down here, we'll add both of those recipes into here. And now when I want to make them, I can just go and say, I want a hardened energizing rod. Hope we're missing a hardened capacitor. Let's do a hardened capacitor real quick. Hardened capacitor. Hope we need a large one of these, which I did not teach the system yet. So we'll do that. And then we can do a hardened capacitor. And once we have that, we can also teach that to the system. So now we can do our hardened rod. And we can also do our hardened energy cell. Take this reward. We have finished both of those. And now the rest of these is basically the same process. We create this, we use it to create these, and we can go through the rest of these. So the blazing crystal is made using blaze rods. And it looks like these are actually not EMCable. So that means we're going to have to actually automate the process for that. Same with these niotic crystals. They're made using diamonds and they're not EMCable. And then the spirited crystals are made with emeralds. And the final one, the nitro crystal, is a tier that is used with nether star. And we can make nitro crystals to make the highest tier. It takes a huge amount of power. It takes nether stars and it takes some other things. But when you get to that level of power, you can do crazy amounts of generation, crazy amounts of transmission. And so we're going to work on getting these set up. I'm going to set up a system on how we can automate making blaze crystals. And then it's basically the same thing for the rest of this once we get there to just combine with the different ingredients that we need. Fortunately, because the hardened tier is EMCable, which I have to think this is why it was done, this automation becomes very simple all the way up to the spirited tier, which is how far we're going to make it today. Normally, you have to do some more fancy kind of automation. Isn't too much more complicated, but it takes some more redstone to make it so that you can put more than one item into the energizing orb at a time. But for all the tiers between hardened or the energized to the nitro, it's just one ingredient. So we put in one blaze rod, we put in one diamond, or we put in one emerald to make the different tiers for that. So we can just have a crafter that is pointed into the energizing orb. It has the recipes for those three. That crafter will put that one item in, and then this redstone can tell that there's an item in the pedestal. So it sends out a redstone signal which locks this crafter so it doesn't put more in. And then we have an importer that imports it in so that once this is finished, it is imported and then the redstone goes off and it puts out the next crafting recipe. So if we come down here and check out our crafting monitor, we're working to make an energizing rod niotic, and it needs to craft these niotic crystals. So it's going to keep going until it has all of those crafted. It'll craft everything else we need. The blazing crystals are also set up to be automated up there. And then we'll be able to put down the blazing or the niotic rod. Now you want to upgrade the power tier here as often as you can, because the higher ones take a lot more power. And so if you're doing them with the lower tiered energizing rods, it would take quite a bit of time for you to get to the point where you can make them. Now, the other thing is we can make multiple blazing rods and point them at, or energizing rods, I mean, and have them pointing at this. And we'll probably do that and expand it so that we can get this done even faster. But for now, I didn't mean to take that. That's going to break my crafting monitor recipe. That's fine. But it's good. So you can see that as soon as this one is finished, it pulls it out and we get a new one, but it takes 300,000 FE. So if we were doing that with a energizing rod that was a lower tiered, it would take huge amounts of time. So I'm going to keep working on upgrading these as we go. We'll put in the niotic ones, we'll get to the spirited ones, and we'll make it so that we can craft those. We will eventually need to get to making the nitro ones, but that is once again another thing that we're going to be limited on with our nether stars, which means we really probably need to make nether stars pretty soon. So I've been taking the energizing rods that we made originally and turning them into the tier that we're on. And so now I have 4 of the niotic rods on this one flux point. And so I'm going to do a energizing rod that is spirited. And you can see it has to craft a whole bunch of things using our system here. But now that we have, oh, that's a mess. That's something I'm going to have to deal with. I was thinking that this would do, without having to do anything complicated, it would only put out one at a time, but it tried to do all 3 of those crafting recipes at the same time, which was an issue. So we'll have to figure that out. Wonder if it's going to keep doing that. because it doesn't know that there's already something there because there's a split second there where it does it. I think what I could do, if we have the crafter just insert items into a hopper, the hopper would get locked. That would keep it just do one item. Let's see if we can do that to fix it really quickly. See if that's as simple as it is. So let's cancel all of this, which means we can pull these items out. So we're going to pull this off. We'll grab another cable. We're going to extend this out one more time. We'll put the crafter with the hopper in front of it. Now the hopper can get locked by the comparator when there's something on there, which means that if I put the crafter facing, I need to face it the other way. There, that'll face the correct way. Put these 3 recipes in. Let's try this again. So let's queue up. We'll try to queue up another spirited one because that'll queue up all the different things that we need. Before we do that, let's put these ones that I have back in. I wanted to use the ingredients I already have rather than crafting them when possible. Some other stuff here too. Okay, so let's try it again and see if it works. Otherwise, we'll have to do something a little more complicated with everything. Okay, so put in the emerald. It's putting out all of the things that we need. And so as long as we don't craft more than, that's what, 320 at a time, it should be fine. So we'll just have to be conscientious of that if we're trying to do really big crafting. But we're going to make one spirited rod and we're going to put it on top. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take off the one of each of these and upgrade them to the spirited tier. That way we can keep as much power going into this as possible as they go, as we tier up to the highest tier. When we get to the Niotic one, we're probably just going to do the crafting manually. We'll queue it up so that it can craft all the components, and then we'll just make it, because we're not going to be doing a ton of those. We want these earlier tiers to be automated because we are, when you need, this one needs the one before it and so forth. To get to this one, you need a lot of the other one, especially when it comes to the energy cells, because each energy cell takes 2 of the tier before it. So basically every time you tier up, you're doubling it. So you have the energy cell starter. This one takes 2 of those to make it. So I guess you can actually use this recipe, but it takes 2 of those to make it. So this one would take 4 of the original one. This one would take 8, 16, 32. So when you make this, you need 64 of the starter energy cells. And so automating that process all along the way is definitely the way to go. So let's go down and check out our crafting monitor. Watch and see this is going. So we have quite a bit more to go. We have scheduled diamond ones. We have to do at least the 4 of the emerald ones. But so everything that we need is now in this hopper, which is kind of nice. We can actually watch to see our progress. It's going to feed those through one at a time. And once they're done and they go back into the system, it'll craft the last item that we need. The way I've been handling this so that we can use the energizing rods that we've already crafted from the tiers before is I just craft the components I need for it, except for the energizing rod. And then when they're done, I take them off and I use them to upgrade to the newest one. The reason for that is I can't take them off and put them into our crafting system because since they have power inside of them, they won't count for the thing. It'll just craft a new one, which will waste resources and fill our system up with energizing rods that we're not going to be using. So it works for now. I have 5 spirited energizing rods on here now, which means once they're all fully charged, that's 20 million FE sitting inside them waiting to be used. And they have pretty fast ability to create things. We could, if we needed to go this faster, you can increase the number of rods that are on this. So there's a range for how far away they can be, but there's no, I don't think there's any limit anyway of how many rods you can have. But I think I'm going to stick with just the 5. What we want to craft next is we're going to go to do a spirited reactor, which means we need to craft. Oh, that's interesting. I need an ender core for it. But if we look at this, we need to work our way up to make these different things all the way through. So we need to do starter reactors and different ones. So actually, I was thinking that this would have to be crafted up as a tiered system, but it looks like they are separate. We just need the spirited crystals and an ender core. So let's try to do an ender core. So we need to get an Eye of Ender. And then we need the dielectric casing and a tiny capacitor. So let's grab those out of our system. Dielectric casings, tiny capacitor. That's this one here. And then we're going to look and see exactly how many each of those we need. We need one of each and 50,000 FE, which shouldn't take us much at all. Let's get one of these going just to see how it works. Yeah, that was super quick. Let's check that out. This is not an item that can be EMC'd, but that's okay. To make the oh, I was actually looking at the energy cells. Okay, that makes more sense. Yes. Let's look at the reactors. Yes, this is what I was expecting to see. So we can actually make the reactor blocks using uranite, but there is a tiered system for it as well. And let's try to craft it this way, because that's going to make it so that all we have to do is craft the capacitors. So what we need, let's take a look at our book and see how this works. In order to create a reactor, you need 36 reactor blocks, and then you place them in a multi-block, and it will create the reactor. For us to make a reactor that is spirited, we need to have all the reactor blocks that are spirited. So when we craft those, where did they go? Here they are. Thermo reactor. Each one of these crafts 4. So to make 36 of reactors, we need 36 of the spirited capacitors. So I'm going to queue up 36 of these capacitors. And that's going to require this system to craft for quite a while. They do go pretty quick now that I have 5 spirited energizing rods, but there's a lot of them to do. So I'm going to let those craft. That is not what I meant. Oh, that's cool. It was a spirited crystal when I grabbed it, so it'll count. So that's all I needed to worry about. So we can just have these finish doing all their crafting. We actually are going to have a lot of these going because each of these capacitors takes where's the recipe for them? Each of them takes 4 of these. So for 36 of them, I have to do 144 of these energizing operations. And you can see each one doesn't take super long, but I have to do it 144 times. So once we get that done, we can craft our reactor blocks and we'll assemble our reactor and we can see how that works. So we do have the option of making the reactor from other tiers of reactor and setting up the recipes to do that. And I just wanted to show that that can be done because in some packs you may have to do that. Fortunately, the pack designer in this one gave us a recipe that just uses uraninite for the recipe. And that's good because they're EMCable, which means I can just craft all of our reactor blocks like that. I think I need one more of these. I think I need 36. So we got to wait for one more of these to craft, which won't take long at all. That's probably because of the one I pulled out and messed up the crafting count. And so we can craft this one. I'm going to build this right here on this floor just to get it going. Let's get rid of the slabs at the bottom and we'll just make it even with the floor. I think this room is odd. So if we do a 3x3 here, it should be good. So then we'll have 5 on that side, 5 on that side. We're good. So I think it needs a block for us to actually place it down on because it builds it all at once. So let's grab cobblestone. We're going to go down here. Right in the middle of this room, we'll just build our way up. That is pretty fancy. All you have to do is have it all in your inventory, and it does all the work for you, placing all the blocks, and it activates. So let's check this out. So there's a lot of different things to take in here. That there is different sides we can use. We have redstone control. Auto mode means the reactor will stop when it is full and start when it has less than 70% energy. That sounds pretty good. Can we turn that on? And I believe that this uses uraninite for power, so let's just grab some of that. And we'll throw it in there and see what happens. So the temperature is heating up. Take a look in here to see what all we need to do with this. It's a little more complicated than just powering it up. We also need to have heats up, causing it to consume the fuel faster and generating less power. So you need to cool it down using a coolant like water. You can use a solid coolant like snow or ice for extra coldness. So solid coolant required. Does require liquid coolant to work, and you keep the reactor buffer full of fuel for better production. I'm not sure what the coal and the redstone do. So carbon materials like coal will improve the fuel efficiency. Redstone will speed up the production, and the fuel consumption will add up, plus 120 C of heat. So let's start with getting water in here. So we have different sides here allow us to do things. I think I'm going to actually break this down and move it up one more level, because making it even with the floor, while it looked nice in theory, makes it so we can't interface with the things very well. So let's put a block here, and we will rebuild this. I think that's so cool, though. It is very fancy. So we have different sides here that have different inputs. So let's start with getting an EMC link. And I don't think we need anything fast because it's not going to go fast. We're just going to use regular ones. I'm going to try just putting one on the side and seeing if we can set it up to auto input. Actually, no, I'm pretty sure that's not going to work. So let's just do it. We're going to put the EMC link in the floor. We're going to put the EMC link in the floor, and then we're going to grab a pipe. We'll need fluid pipes, we'll need item pipes. So let's set this one to water. And then we'll put an item pipe here like this, and grab our pipe wrench. We'll set it to pull in. Let's see, does that allow it to, yep, that filled it with coolant. We also want to do one, let's do one on this side. Obviously, we're going to need one that imports fuel. So when we go in here and grab uraninite, we can do this. We'll do the same thing, but this time we're going to use an item pipe, set it for input, and that's going to put in fuel in the middle, and it keeps going while it fills up the center. You can see we're now generating power because we have granite and coolant. So we want to keep it in an ideal temperature range to generate the best amount of power that we can. We're currently, it was at 30K, it's slowing down or balancing out there. So we're generating a pretty decent amount of power. We want to also add in, do an EMC link right here. And we can put this here. And for this one, let's do the redstone. We'll set this to redstone, and that'll make it so that this is now putting in redstone dust here, which is changing the fuel consumption and increasing the temperature from the fuel that we get. So that should make it so it generates more power because it has it being a little more efficient at keeping the cooling going. And then the last thing, we're going to have to go through the wall here to get to it, unfortunately. It's fine. We can cover that up. We'll do an EMC link here. We'll do another item link here. And we're going to grab some coal. Let's actually do coal blocks because we have them. And we'll set that there and check this out. So we now have coal going in, which means that we are at 37,000 FE per tick, which is pretty decent for a reactor of this size. We can close that off for now. And the question is, how do I get power out of this? I don't know if there is a port on top. So let's grab a flux plug. And if we just connect this onto the roof, we set this to our network, you now have power transferring from here into our network at a rate of 37,000 FE per tick. Now, if we get some other coolant, let's just try it. I know I have ice in here, and we can easily make ice. Let's see if blue ice has the same effect as regular ice. It does. That cools it down. That actually gets us up to 40,000 FE per tick. I think there should be an input on the bottom since there is one on the roof as well. So let's check. Yes, so we can do, let's do one more item pipe. We'll do one more EMC link. Then we'll grab that blue ice and we will set it to this one for output. That means that'll keep that stocked. So now this one reactor allows us to generate 40 or 55,000 FE per tick is where it's currently at. When it's running, it may even get higher because the cooling will be able to keep the temperature in a good range. We'll have to see. So we have to set this up so that we're actually using this power for us to see how well it's doing. I can set it back into auto mode so that it basically that means it won't consume fuel when the power gets full, so that we don't waste anything. So that's basically how we set up our reactors. And remember, this is the spirited version. Once we get into the next tier, we can actually go higher and get to a nitro version where the generation factor goes to 5.4K. And this one is at a generation factor of 3.8. So we'll go considerably higher with the nitro version. And we can make multiple ones of these reactors to get a large amount of power generation. So that's going to call it for today. We've done a lot. We're way over time. I'm going to have to edit down quite a bit to get this episode out. But we managed to get our automation for power going, at least to start. We'll have some more complex stuff in the future if we want to automate the building of these, because the nitro crystals require multiple items, as well as the reactors themselves will and other things like that will require us to use multiple different items going into an energizing orbit once, which should be interesting to figure out. But we have the basics going, and we have a huge amount of power being generated from our reactor as things are. So I hope you enjoyed watching this episode. We'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.